I want to give a shout out to all of my patrons. Thank you so much for all of the continued support. And I am done. All right, so I just got finished up listening to the Lies of Locke Lamora. This is book 1 in the Gentleman Bastard series by Scott Lynch. And I want to give you my unedited thoughts upon finishing this book, which was just right now. So I love this book. I've read it before. This is a reread, and I love it just as much, if not more, than the first time I read it. This is one of my favorite books that I've ever read in my life. And I give this 5 stars, this glowing 5 stars, not just to this book, but to the audiobook performance by Michael Page. It's to die for. And I think it's the preferred way to read this story. He just elevates everything to a different level. The way that he does these voices, the way that he puts the inflection in things, the different accents that he has to use, all of the characters just come so dearly to life. I've said that there is these 2 or 3 big voice actors in stories that I think are at the top of the game. And one of them is this book in this series right here. So go, if you're planning on reading this book, do yourself a favor and get on an Audible. You will thank me later, or you can just thank me right now. That's totally fine too. So yeah, this is one of my favorite books of all time. And I'm so pleased that this book held up on a reread. I think in general, I like rereads a lot. I almost always find that when I reread a book, I end up liking it just as much, if not more. And part of this is because I'm only going to reread books that I really liked and books that resonated with me. And it was just so wonderful when you're already in love with a book and you already are in love with the characters. When you get to go start over again, that sense of mystery is gone. And I love that sense of mystery for a first read. But to then just be sucked right into these characters, new characters get brought up, characters that at the time that they're brought up, you don't know how much of a part they played in the story. But every time a new character is brought up that I know that lasts for a long time in the series, that I love, it just brings this warm smile to my face that I'm back here with these characters that I know and love and get to pay attention to these details that I might not have the first time because I know what's important and what's not important and what I could really pay attention to. This series itself has declined a bit in popularity over time as this author has taken a real long time to continue this series. So in October of this year, it will be 10 years since the release of the 3rd book, the most recent book in this series. And we've been waiting a real long time, almost 10 years, to get that 4th book. There was only 1 year that separated the first book from the second book, and then 6 years between the second book and the 3rd book. And here we are now, waiting 10 plus years for this 4th book. That is frustrating, and that is always going to make a series decline in popularity over time. Think Kingkiller Chronicle, looking right at you. So let us go into this a little bit. If you haven't read this book at all, let's talk some basics about this book. Let's talk plot. This plot is really intriguing to me because in its core, it is a heist novel, a fantasy heist novel. I tend to like those kind of things, and this is done to perfection, but it's not done in a cohesive writing style. It's done in a style where every other chapter, you get a chapter from the modern day, what's going on with this heist, but then you get a chapter back in time. You learn about Locke Lamora, the protagonist of the story, who is like the world's greatest thief, and you get to see him as a little boy when he's an orphan and moves to this family of other thieves and has to learn the ropes. And it's just a really fun concept. Now, a lot of stories try this sort of thing. I recall that one of Mark Lawrence's series, I think it was the Broken Empire series, did something similar to this. And I didn't like the way it was done there because it didn't really make sense. It felt like it was broken up in a way that it would have been better just to tell the first story and then blend in the second one. This one worked really well because so many of the times that you'd find out something from these, they're called interludes, but really it's like a flash to the past. It made the current chapter more relevant. You got to learn something that you didn't realize you were learning from the interludes that made sense for the modern day. And I just loved them both really equally. It showed you over time why this character is the way they are, and you get more depth to the character that way. It was just a really good way to go about it. But yeah, this is a big heist. The character has this plot that they want to scam this nobleman for an enormous sum of money when not only are they not allowed to do this, because you're stealing, that's not allowed, but they're part of this greater gang. Like this one big gang runs the entire city. But there's this secret pact that's made between the nobles and with this gang that the gang's never going to steal from the nobles. They're going to steal from like the middle, lower classes. But this one, Locke Lamora and his crew of a handful of other people, they are breaking that peace and they are stealing from the nobles. So there's several layers to this, tons of twists and turns that go along. Some of the best twists and turns that I've ever read in fantasy exist here. It's just a magnificently thought out plot that I loved from start to finish. The characters here, the characters shine. I mean, all of these characters come so much to life, and I think it would come out in text alone, but on audio, it just makes it even more like lifelike. I love not just the characters, but the character progression here was just absolutely to die for. Characters that have sat with me for a long, long time since I read that first book. I know everything about them. They're so perfectly well written. Even the characters that you're not supposed to really like are extremely well written. The characters that the main character is scamming are well written. Every one of these characters feels pretty well written and kind of like top tier. The way that they all talk and these different inflections and the way that some of the characters have this rougher form of speaking. I mean, it's just wonderful. The world here is magnificent. Now, it would be easy to say that this world is kind of mimicking like modern day Venice. You've got this world where it feels like Italy, and you've got these boats that are floating around. It's not quite like Venice where everything's floating, but it just feels like not just an Italian city. Kind of the names are kind of similar to that, but it kind of has that more Venetian feel to it. But it's so lifelike. Every time that you got some like world building aspects to this, I just soaked them up. I mean, this world has stayed with me for a long time. I've read books this year that the world is already escaping me, just didn't capture the imagination like this one did. But this one does a perfect job at it. The magic here is the one lacking part of this story. There's not a lot of it. One character does have a lot of magic that almost to the point of feeling overpowered. They're not, in my opinion. But it feels that way, especially when you're first getting introduced to them. But it's really the only big magical part of this. I mean, the world has some magical elements in the sense that, there's these huge alien-like towers that nobody knows who built them that reflect light in really cool ways. But it's more of like a setting thing. It doesn't really change the story. The only true magic aspect of the story is this one character. And it's a character shrouded in a lot of mystery. It's a very soft magic system. You have no idea how this character has the powers that they have, what the limitations of those powers are. You just kind of got to accept that this character has them. This villain has them. And it's a little weird. It feels like it could be better done. But yeah, so that's the one criticism I have on this book is the way that the magic is utilized. But perhaps the best part of this book for me is the prose. It's not like this beautiful prose like you're going to get from like a Robin Hobb or a Guy Gavriel Kay or somebody like that, or like a Steven Erikson. But it just works so well. I mean, the characters, especially Locke, talks in excessive profanity. Now, I usually kind of cringe when profanity is used in stories, but it's so like inventive here, especially when Michael Page does the narration. It just puts a smile on my face. And you're hearing these combinations of profanity that I've never heard before that it makes me laugh. Not because it's outwardly funny, it's just enjoyable. And I soaked up every bit of it. So if you haven't got the picture here, I love this book. It's so dang good. There's a reason that it is a big fan favorite in the fantasy community. And I'm so glad that I did a restart of reading this series. I can't wait to read the second and third books here. Even though I originally scored those books a little lower, I think I gave the second book a 4.5. I think I gave the third book a 4. I feel pretty confidently that I'm going to like them more and more as I read them for a second time around. And I'm just really looking forward to it in the coming months. So I'm not going to keep this super long. I can't just keep glowing about a book nonstop. But if you haven't read this, go read it. I think that if you like a heist story, you're going to love this thing. If you like things a little darker, you're going to love this. It's got some dark moments to it. If you like emotional roller coasters, you're going to love this. And if you like really fun twists, you're going to like this. On the other hand, some of those things, if you don't like those things, you're probably not going to really enjoy this. Like if you hate a heist story, if you get turned off by profanity, if you really need like a strong, hard magic system, like a Brandon Sanderson magic system, you might struggle with this. If you get kind of queasy around, violence, I don't think you're going to really, there's going to be moments here where you feel really put off. But I find that a lot of people that like my channel, I kind of appeal more to like the adult fantasy, not necessarily just grimdark, although I love that, but a little more like that than not. I suspect that most of the people that are watching this right now are going to really like this thing, at least at like the 4 out of 5 range, if not higher. So I'm going to end things off there. Thank you so much for watching this review. And as always, happy reading to you. Thanks again to all of my patrons, with a special shout out to my Ascendant tier and Librarian tier patrons: Anna G, Brian, CJ, Darren, Jonathan, My Book is Lit, Nathan T, Nev's Book Channel, Ron Reich, Russell, Ryan L, Anna, Andra, Angelo, Ben, Blair, Brock, Evan, Jen B, Harry B, Jamie, Jeff Pixler, Maria, Michael Sugarman, Sky, TW57, Wacky, and Zion.